All right, boys and girls, we're going to read chapters 8, maybe through 9, possibly 10. Of course, at the end of chapter 7, Stanley had finished digging his first hole and was pretty proud of himself for it. This chapter, chapter 8, is a whole different ballgame. If you remember back at the beginning of our story, when they talked about Camp Green Lake for a little bit, that kind of narrative kind of chapter. We're going to have our narrator telling us about something else. Here we go. Chapter 8. A lot of people don't believe in curses. A lot of people don't believe in yellow-spotted lizards either. But if one bites you, it doesn't make a difference whether you believe in it or not. Actually, it is kind of odd that scientists named the lizard after its yellow spots. Each lizard has exactly 11 yellow spots, but the spots are hard to see on its yellow-green body. The lizard is from 6 to 10 inches long and has big red eyes. In truth, its eyes are yellow, and it is the skin around its eyes which is red. But everyone always speaks of its red eyes. It also has black teeth and a milky white tongue. Now, we talked about in one of the previous chapters imagery and visualization and about how you should probably have more than one sense, or probably up to 3, maybe more. This is a case where Louis Sachar does such a good job with one sense, our visual sense, that you can see the yellow-spotted lizard. So I like to make exceptions when we talk about lit terms, and this is one of them. When a writer's really good at what he does, or what she does, you get visualization with one really good, well-written sense. Looking at one, you would have thought that it should have been named a red-eyed lizard, or a black-toothed lizard, or perhaps a white-tongued lizard. If you've ever been close enough to see the yellow spots, you are probably dead. The yellow-spotted lizards like to live in holes, which offer shade from the sun and protection from predatory birds. Up to 20 lizards may live in one hole. They have strong, powerful legs and can leap out of very deep holes to attack their prey. They eat small animals, insects, certain cactus thorns, and the shells of sunflower seeds. Holes in sunflower seeds. Rings a bell, doesn't it? Chapter 9. Stanley stood in the shower and let the cold water pour over his hot, sore body. It was 4 minutes of heaven. Hyperbole. For the second day in a row, he didn't use soap. He was too tired. There was no roof over the shower building, and the walls were raised up 6 inches off the ground, except in the corners. There was no drain in the floor. The water ran out under the walls and evaporated quickly in the sun. He put on his clean set of orange clothes. He returned to his tent, put his dirty clothes in the crate, got out his pen and box of stationery, and headed to the rec room, R-E-C-R-O-O-M, recreation room. A sign on the door said rec room, W-R-E-C-K, room. What does rec mean as opposed to wreck? Nearly everything in the room was broken. The TV, the pinball machine, the furniture, even the people looked broken, with their worn-out bodies sprawled over the various chairs and sofas. X-Ray and Armpit were playing pool. The surface of the table reminded Stanley of the surface of the lake. All right, before we read the next why, what's the surface of the lake look like where they're digging? So what do you think the surface of this pool table looks like? Let's find out if we're right. It was full of bumps and holes. Notice how many times that word comes into play. Because so many people had carved their initials into the felt. There was a hole in the far wall, and an electric fan had been placed in front of it. Cheap air conditioning. At least the fan worked. As Stanley made his way across the room, he tripped over an outstretched leg. "Hey, watch it!" said an orange lump on a chair. "You watch it," muttered Stanley, too tired to care. "What'd you say?" the lump demanded. "Nothing." The lump rose. He was almost as big as Stanley, and a lot tougher. "You said something." He poked his fat finger in Stanley's neck. "What did you say?" A crowd formed around him. "Be cool," said X-Ray. He put his hand on Stanley's shoulder. "You don't want to mess with the caveman," he warned. Yeah, the caveman's cool, said Armpit. I'm not looking for trouble, Stanley said. I'm just tired, that's all. The lump grunted. X-Ray and Armpit led Stanley over to a couch. Squid slid over to make room as Stanley sat down. Did you see Caveman back there? X-Ray asked. Yeah, the caveman's one tough dude, said Squid, and he lightly punched Stanley's arm. Stanley leaned back against the torn vinyl upholstery. Despite the shower, his body still radiated heat. Great word, radiated. I wasn't trying to start anything, he said. The last thing he wanted to do after killing himself all day on the lake was to get in a fight with a boy called the Caveman. He was glad X-Ray and Armpit had come to his rescue. Well, how'd you like your first hole? Asked Squid. Stanley groaned, and the other boys laughed. Well, the first hole's the hardest, said Stanley. No way, said X-Ray. The second hole's a lot harder. You're hurting before you even get started. If you think you're sore now, just wait and see how you feel tomorrow morning, right? That's right, said Squid. Plus the fun's gone, said X-Ray. The fun? Asked Stanley. Don't lie to me. I bet you always wanted to dig a hole, right? Am I right? Stanley had never really thought about it before, but he knew better than to tell X-Ray he wasn't right. Every kid in the world wants to dig a great big hole, said X-Ray. To China, right? Right, said Stanley. See what I mean, said X-Ray. That's what I'm saying. But now the fun's gone, and you still gotta do it again, and again, and again. Camp Fun and Games, said Stanley. What's in the box? Asked Squid. Stanley had forgotten he had brought it. Paper? I was going to write a letter to my mother. Your mother? Laughed Squid. She'll worry if I don't. Squid scowled. Ugh. Stanley looked around the room. This was the one place in camp where the boys could enjoy themselves. And what'd they do? They wrecked it. The glass on the TV was smashed, as if someone had put his foot through it. Every table and chair seemed to be missing at least one leg. Everything leaned. So there's some irony there. The irony that they have this place where if they kept everything nice, they'd have a place to relax and have fun, and they just go ahead and wreck the place. Space, but we're not going back in time. We're not jumping ahead. So notice how Louis Sachar uses these spaces. Flashback, jump ahead. He waited to write the letter until after Squid had gotten up and joined the game of pool. Dear Mom, today was my first day at camp, and I've already made some friends. We've been out on the lake all day, so I'm pretty tired. Once I pass the swimming test, I'll get to learn how to water ski. He stopped writing as he became aware that somebody was leaning over his shoulder. He turned to see Zero, standing behind the couch. I don't want her to worry about me, he explained. Zero said nothing. He just stared at the letter with a serious, almost angry look on his face. Stanley slipped it back into the stationery box. Did the shoes have red X's on the back? Zero asked him. It took Stanley a moment, but then he realized Zero was asking about Clyde Livingston's shoes. Yes, they did, he said. He wondered how Zero knew that. Brand X was a popular brand of sneakers. Maybe Clyde Livingston made a commercial for them. Zero stared at him for a moment with the same intensity with which he had been staring at the letter. Stanley poked his finger through a hole in the vinyl couch and pulled out some of the stuffing. He wasn't aware of what he was doing, so he's kind of wrecking the place now. Come on, Caveman, dinner, said Armpit. You coming, Caveman? Said Squid. Stanley looked around to see that Armpit and Squid were talking to him. Sure, he said. He put the piece of stationery back in the box, then got up and followed the boys out to the tables. The lump wasn't the caveman. He was. He shrugged his left shoulder. It was better than Barf Bag. So the neat thing about this chapter is that Stanley finishes his hole and he walks in, and this kid's getting into the lump, is getting into his grill, ready to fight, and his crew get around him and start talking about Caveman. And it turns out the lump's not Caveman, like Stanley thought. He's Caveman. He got the nickname, which is kind of neat. So here's what's funny. It doesn't seem like he has a lot of friends. in the real world, but he comes to this place, and it seems like he's got some friends now. We'll see. It's a long chapter, or a long book. We'll see if they end up his friends or not. We're going to stop there. As we head to chapter 10, we'll get to find out if the first hole was the hardest or if it's the second hole. On to the next.